Hi there. Welcome back to another This or That video. Today we are matching up the Enneagram Type 1, known as the Perfectionist, sometimes also known as the Improver, with the Enneagram Type 3. A lot of times you'll hear them called the Achiever. I also think the term the Performer can be really appropriate, and we'll talk about why that is in just a minute. We're going to look at some similarities, why there might be some confusion between these two. And then we're going to look at a couple of key differences to hopefully help you narrow it down, or at least give you some additional things to think about, reflect on, get curious about, to continue to help clarify, am I this or am I that? I will preface with this type 3 energy specifically. A lot of times type 3 can be confused along all kinds of different types journey, because we have here in the United States anyway, and if you're not from the United States, you probably see this in us already. We have a lot of type 3 energy in general that we have been exposed to in school and work, just in general society, kind of that hustle harder, effort, the 5 a.m. club, sleep when you're dead, always be productive, don't take time off, like work and answer emails on your vacation. So we have a lot of that energy. There's a layer of that regardless of what our type is. So that can add some confusion sometimes too. Today though, we're really going to look at why that type 3 and type 1 energy are different specifically, but I always like just to mention that. And also, I think sometimes we can get caught up in the nicknames for the types, and especially in the workplace, especially for entrepreneurs or leaders, who doesn't want to be known as the achiever, who doesn't want their type to be the achiever. So sometimes we may think that that's what we want to be, when in reality it's something different. And each type has their gifts, their strengths, and then also that shadow side. So there's not one type that's better than the other. I don't have to tell you that though. I am your guide in this or that video. Sarah Wallace, owner of the Enneagram MBA company, host of the Enneagram MBA podcast, certified Enneagram coach, workshop facilitator, speaker. I get to bring the Enneagram to event organizations, to event attendees at conferences, organizations who have sales teams, marketing teams, small businesses, to their entire team, to sports teams, to special interest groups, specifically women's groups. I love that. And then get to do some one-on-one work with people navigating a career change or just a change in life, around how their personality might impact that, and what the best path is for themselves. With that, let's start with taking a look at some of the similarities between these two and why you might be struggling between the type 1 and the type 3. I do want to mention though, the thing that makes a 1 is that core motive, that core strategy. And for the 1, it's the striving to be perfect, to be good, to be right. For the type 3, the thing that they're striving towards is to feel outstanding, to feel successful, to feel worthy. And a lot of times they'll put their worth in their title, in their material possessions, in the amount on their paycheck. Talk more about that in a minute. But right off the bat, that is the thing that makes a 1 and a 3 a 3. Sometimes though, it can be confusing because there's a lot of similarities. Both the 1 and the 3, along with the 5, are in that competency triad when it comes to facing conflict or dealing with a problem. There's types that will have a positive outlook, put rose-colored glasses, everything happens for a reason, silver lining. There's types that will just need to vent and express very strong emotions, whether it's anger or sadness or worry. And then there's our 1s, 3s, and 5s who don't have time for either. Show me, don't give me the drama, show me the data. And they're thinking, listen, we have a problem in front of us. Let's go into problem solving mode. Let's solve this. We're sensible, rational adults. We just need to get to work, put our heads down and get to work, which has its pros in certain situations. You need that energy at times, right? And then the thing for those in this type to be cautious of, though, is that there may just be times where somebody needs to vent. They don't need their problem solved necessarily. They just need to express how they're feeling. It can be very frustrating to be talking to somebody who immediately goes into problem solving mode. On the flip side, though, I very much understand the frustration that our 1, 3s, and 5s can feel when they're kind of overwhelmed with a lot of emotion. When it's clear, it's like, this isn't helping the situation. We need to focus on the problem and how to solve it. So I understand that. Just something to be aware of. So they both very much have that in common, that's not always, it's not to say they don't have anger, express emotions, but that will be a common tendency that both types will turn to in conflict. There is a flavor of a 3. If you're familiar with the subtypes, there is a subtype of a 3 who is more focused on being right. They may have more anxiety around being right. So that is why they may look like a 1 at times. The behavior may look like a 1. Both are really focused on hard work, hustle, effort. If it feels easy, it just doesn't feel like, it's they're not doing something right. They can't enjoy the reward. They can't enjoy the accomplishment if they don't feel like they worked really hard, and then they expect everybody else to kind of do the same. Both love a good checklist. I hear from both my 1s and my 3s and workshops or clients that they love the to-do list. They love the goal list. They love the checking off, the crossing off. So both, will have that behavior in common. And then both will find delegating to be difficult, maybe for a little bit different of a reason. I do think it has something to do with that hard work mentality. Not to say that other types don't also want to work hard. It's just very much a focus for these 2 types specifically. And so delegating can feel like, well, I'm not working hard enough. Or if I give it to somebody else, then what am I doing? It's just like, I'm not, am I part of this process? Or it could just kind of feel like, no, I need to be the one to do it. And sometimes 1s feel that way because they're thinking nobody else can do it as good as I can do it, or nobody else can do it right. If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself kind of mentality. Maybe a little bit for the 3 as well. Delegating can be difficult for 3s too in those situations. Now, other similarities might exist, or they do exist out there, but we're going to now shift and take a look at some of those key differences. One of them being the preference of being right versus being efficient. Now, if you ask either type, especially the 1s, what do you prefer? They're not going to want to answer, right? If you're a 1, you're going to want both. I want to be right and I want to be efficient. But if you absolutely had to choose, most of the time, those who identify as that type 1 with that type 1 energy are going to want it done right, just a tad more than they're going to want it done efficient. They will typically think that right is the same as being efficient. Now, our type 3s also don't necessarily want that choice, but they will tend to pick efficiency over anything else. That is very much a superpower of the 3, is their ability to have a goal, see the steps that need to happen in order to get to that goal, and then jump into action to make it happen in the quickest, most efficient, effective way possible. And so their right tends to be being efficient. Another difference comes down to quality. So a 1 has a incredibly high standard for excellence, and especially thinking in the workplace, as a business owner, as someone on the team. If you're putting something together, a 1 is going to care less about what the customer actually wants and more about is this meeting the standard, my standard of excellence, regardless of what the customer needs or wants. Or even if the customer doesn't even notice, they're going to spend extra time, maybe going above and beyond to make it perfect, to make it the most excellent project, the most excellent work, service that's ever been given to them, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We're not talking about bad or good, right or wrong necessarily, just giving you some insight about yourself, giving you some things to think about. So that's kind of how the 1 will approach quality, whereas a 3 is going to be a little bit more focused on the customer. What do they want? What do they actually ask for? Let's get it to them as soon as possible, not giving them crap by any means, but they're going to feel like that pursuit of perfection is almost a waste of time, and be a little annoyed at the time wasted trying to get it perfect, when good enough in this situation is exactly what the customer wanted. They're happy, they got it on time, they got it before the deadline, whatever it might be. So let's move on. So that's one other distinction. Type 3s are in that assertive stance with our 8s and our 7s when it comes to kind of going after what you want. They're in the future focused orientation, time orientation. They're focused on going far and going fast. Efficiency, again, is going to play here. Now, the 1s are in that dutiful, sometimes known as the compliant stance with our 2s and 6s, and they may not jump into action as quickly. They may kind of look around, not what's best for me, what does the rest of the group need? A little bit more focused maybe on the common good than a 3 tends to be. Again, not right or wrong, just it is. And these are tendencies, not 100% true all the time, where rather than going far and fast, they're going to be a little bit more focused on getting it precise and being correct in whatever it is they're pursuing. 3s can shapeshift very easily. And it is a superpower, and it can also be something that you want to be cautious of if you end up identifying most as a 3. Here's why. 1, it's excellent because you can read a room and you can shapeshift and turn into whoever it is you need to be in that room, or you're in a client meeting 1 minute, you're at your book club the next minute, the next morning, you're in a meeting with the executive staff, whatever it might be, you're able to rise to the occasion to meet that person wherever it is they are and shapeshift to be the person they need you to be in that situation. Excellent, right? The downside of that, or just the word of caution in that situation, is that sometimes 3s tend to lose their identity. Who am I? I have been striving towards this picture of success based on what other people expect of me, or what other people have said the standard of success is. And I've lost myself along the way. I've lost myself because I'm turning into all these different people, but I'm not necessarily in touch and being who I truly want to be. And so a lot of times 3s will have a moment where it's like, gosh, all of this stuff, I'm so exhausted. I'm burnt out from trying to be somebody that I'm just truly not, but I've done it because I've thought that will lead me to that feeling of success. That will get me to what I want, and then I'll be happy. And most of the time, as we all know, it's usually not the case. Whereas a 1, on the other hand, is very comfortable standing all by themselves, very comfortable being the only one believing what they believe, saying what they're saying, because they have such strong convictions. They are so in touch with who they are and what they believe that they typically will not shapeshift. They will not be whoever it is you need them to be in that room in front of that person. And that's okay too, right? That both are okay. It's just understanding which behavior tends to be your strategy in those situations. In stress, this is always something too that can be helpful to look at. In stress, a type 1 will go after they've used all of their own coping mechanisms and different strategies, they'll make a lateral shift over to some of the unhealthier qualities of the 4, which kind of align with this like ability to stand by yourself, but in a state of stress, it can feel like you're isolating yourself, you're withdrawing, maybe you're a little bit more moody, you're so frustrated with the world. Why can't people see it the way you see it? Nobody's doing it correct. People are wrong. And that can feel very, very frustrating. You can get in your moods, like sometimes the 4 gets known for being, and being just quite perfectly fine with being alone. The type 3 in stress, after they used all of their own coping strategies, defense mechanisms, will make a lateral shift over to the stress and coping mechanisms, that of a type 9, which you'll find them maybe numbing out, which is very unlike the 3, right? Who tends to be very busy, productive, efficient, like always on the go. In a state of stress, potentially even burnout, they're going to zone out. They're going to, maybe just mindlessly watch Netflix, just go through the motions, whatever that looks like for you. They may stay busy, but not their usual productive self. They may have kind of lost that clarity of what needs to be done, that effectiveness, that efficiency. And so they're doing a lot of things in the state of stress, but not necessarily productive. So I don't know if you've noticed one way or the other that you have a tendency to show up in stress, but that will be a clue. Another clue is to look at what is sometimes known as your growth arrow. It can also be known as the type that you most neglect in the beginning. And for a type 1, that is the type 7. They see type 7 as being maybe frivolous, scattered all over the place, without a plan. It can almost feel dangerous to have, that much fun and just kind of that optimistic outlook that a lot of times 7s are known for having. It can just feel like that's not realistic, that's irresponsible. And so in the beginning, they'll tend to neglect that energy out of all the types, when in reality, that is the exact blend of energy that type 1 needs to really kind of build that full, fulfilling picture, allow them to have the joy, the spontaneity to, not always be working so hard. And then for the 3, the energy that they tend to neglect the most, so sometimes known as their growth arrow, is the energy of the 6. They can feel like, because the 6 is focused on feeling safe and secure, that can be sometimes in direct conflict with that forward moving energy, like jump in, let's make it happen, let's do it, let's get it done. We don't have to have everything figured out necessarily. I'm confident that we're going to figure it out. Let's be bold, let's be outstanding. And so to feel safe and secure can kind of feel like, oh, we're just being average. We're just mediocre. I don't want that. Stay away from me. I'm going to neglect that energy, when in reality, that 6 energy is one of the best blends that you can bring to your type 3 energy to really create that full picture, really a picture of growth, getting into more of that healthy range, using that energy to be more collaborative, to allow people to support you. You don't have to do it all by yourself. And then be okay with sometimes maybe being behind the scenes. So, allowing a teammate, a friend, a coworker, somebody that you're leading to be in the spotlight while you are maybe the role model, the guide behind the scenes occasionally. So those are just a couple of opportunities. I'm looking at how to, or when, to do kind of a unique spin on growing for each of these types, like how to actually apply it along your self-growth journey. These are more kind of information focused. So stay tuned for some of those videos coming soon. In that 7 space up here, kind of brainstorming what's next. But at the end of the day, goes back to that core motive. Would I rather, if I had to choose, am I striving to feel perfect, or am I more striving to feel outstanding? And sometimes that's hard. I mean, there's a lot of similarities like we've talked about, but understanding which one you are at some point will be important so that you can get on that most aligned growth path for you based on that core driver that is driving the bus most of the time, not necessarily all the time, but most of the time. So if this was helpful, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If there are additional insights about being a 1 or a 3 in your experience, please share that as well. Anything that is helping you continue to narrow it down, I'd love to hear about that. And then lastly, if you know somebody that would be helped by this video or one of the other this or that videos in this, in the Enneagram MBA channel, in the Enneagram MBA library, please share as well. I do have an Understanding People cheat sheet that you can download at enneagramMBA.com/cheat sheet that lists all the 9 types. It gives you some additional insight about what makes that type a type, their gifts, some things to be cautious of that might help you better understand yourself and those around you. So with that, thanks so much for being here, and I will see you around.